Second Timothy, and this is the end of the letter, so most of it will be the goodbyes by Shaul to Timothy. So I'll begin with verse 1, and it says, "In the sight of Yahweh and the sovereign Yahushua Hamashiach, who shall judge the living and the dead at his appearing and his reign, I earnestly charge you." So we're about to see what is the charge, but even before that, as I have mentioned in previous chapters, this word that we see here is important. And for that, let me just go for a moment here to the concordance. And even though, like I have mentioned, I do believe completely that the new covenant was written originally in Hebrew, still we'll see the Greek equivalent of the word that would have been there originally, or appearing, which would be epiphaneia, right? From where we get epiphany, an appearance. So let me see if we get more. You see, often used by the Greeks of a glorious manifestation of the gods, as they would say, right? This is wrong, this is wrong. But basically the point is that it was understood as the manifestation of a mighty one in the flesh, right? Just like a visitation, right? Yahweh said that he would visit his people, and he did through, well, one of the times when he said it was when the people of Israel were in Egypt, and Yahweh went down, saw everything, and sent Moshe. So he visited them spiritually, and then through Moshe, as a representation of he who would come later on to redeem us, which would be himself in the flesh appearing. And obviously, appearance has to do with something that you see. So it is referring to him being on earth and being seen. Him who is invisible would become visible through matter or the flesh for his creations. So that's what Mashiach is. But in this case, we are reading about a second appearing, referring to the second manifestation, for he came as the first, and now he would come as the last. Good to see you, Yahweh. I will bless you, brother. So, in the sight of Yahweh and the sovereign Yahushua HaMashiach, who shall judge the living and the dead, every single person. That's why Yahushua, and this is an important point, Yahushua, as the soul of the Most High, as his image, had to come to the world of images in order to die, so that he would rule not only over those who live, but also over those who have died. So that's why he had to die without having sin, so that he will become the king of everything, living and the dead. Because before that, the enemy had all the power over the dead. And because of the Torah, everybody was dead, right? Through the accusation of the enemy. So Yahushua had to come and die to defeat death. So in the sight of Yahweh and the sovereign Yahushua HaMashiach, who shall judge the living and the dead at his appearing and his reign, right? Because he first came as the Kohen Hagadol, right? The high priest. Now he comes as the Melech Gadol, as the great king. So he comes to judge, for he first came to forgive, right? He first came as a lawyer to defend. Now he comes as a witness to accuse, in the sense of to separate those who are guilty from those who are innocent, and therefore those who are guilty will feel accused, so they will see the witness as the enemy, for the enemy is the accuser, right? Yahushua came as the lamb, the last comes as a lion, and it is written that the enemy goes around like a roaring lion. So those who are spiritually blind will misunderstand that, and that's why he comes as a thief in the night. Even though he is appearing, he will be like a thief in the night. For those who are in spiritual blindness, they will be in darkness when he manifests, even though he's appearing. And instead, they will interpret that he is the enemy. So he first came to redeem as a lawyer, to defend. The last comes as a witness. And the mix of the first and the last becomes the judge, right? Yahweh for last. So he manifested as a lawyer to defend those who are his, those who do his commandments, and then as a witness to condemn those who don't. So he would come to bring justice as the last. And through that, separate the living from the dead in the spiritual sense, those who will live eternally and those who won't. But in the physical sense, obviously, to resurrect those who are dead and to transform those who are living and judge them all at his appearing and his reign when he comes as a king. And now I earnestly charge you, proclaim the word. Proclaim the word. Now, just since I have the concordance here, let me see something real quick. And also, in case you are reading from a physical scripture, you can go to Revelation 19:13. So here we have the word preach. The other one said proclaim. The Greek word would be soon. There we go. All right, perfect. So it is to be a herald, right? To announce, because they are the good news. To officiate as a herald, same thing. To always with the suggestion of formality, gravity, and an authority which must be listened to and obeyed. To publish, so once again, the good news that Mashiach died for our sins. It says the word, right? Proclaim, announce the word. If we go to Revelation 19:13, which I mentioned a bit ago, that it says, and having been dressed in a robe dipped in blood, and his name is called the word of Yahweh. So the word is the name of the Messiah. So by Shaul saying proclaim the word, he would be saying announce the name of the Messiah. And that unfolds, right? Because if you would, well, receive the name, then you would understand that the name is the actual proclamation that we must do, the confession according to Romans 10:10, the confession with our mouth of his name, Yahushua. And then we would understand that that means Yahweh saves. So it is a covenant that we do with him, whom we must love with all our heart, all our mind, and all our strength. So we're going to seek to know him and to know his will through the reading of scriptures in order to please him and serve him, for he paid for our sins. So that's when we go to the scriptures, which were completely inspired by Yahushua, who is the word. For it is written in John 1, in the beginning was the word, and the word was with Elohim, and the word was Elohim, right? And everything that was created was through the word. That's why we see in Genesis that Yahweh said, let there be light. So he spoke and there was light. And then he said everything else. He created everything through 10 sayings as the 10 commandments. So proclaim the word. Yahushua, he is the word, and therefore he inspired everything that is written in the scriptures, but it all begins with his name. For as John 14:26 says, the Spirit, the Ruach HaKodesh, which comes to teach us all things, the Ruach comes in the name of the Messiah. So you need to believe, proclaim the name, so that Yahweh will send the Ruach, so that you understand the rest of words that were inspired by the word. So proclaim the word, be urgent in season, out of season, right? Be urgent always, pretty much, at all times, even when it's not the season. Remember, keep it in mind, proclaim, tell others about salvation, about the truth, about Yahushua. Be urgent in season, out of season. Convict, warn, appeal with all patience and teaching. This here is quite important. A lot of people, they try to do this, but they forget about this. So without this, you cannot actually do this. And therefore, we need to remember it. Proclaim the word, be urgent in season, out of season. So everybody's like, yeah, I got to tell everybody. But sometimes, because of our flesh, because of our lack of experience, whatever it may be, discernment, or depends on the person, we want everybody to get it right away, and we don't remember that it is Yahweh who will give them understanding. He is the one who decides through the actions and the will of the person, for everybody has free will. So we need to remember that everybody has free will, and that according to that and the decision of the person, and obviously his or her actions, that Yahweh will reveal himself to them, and that will click and make them understand what you're saying. But you need those two things. So that means that many times you're going to talk to people and people are not going to get it. They're not going to care. But what you said needed to be said. So it counts when it comes to your mission. But sometimes, right, people start to convict, warn, appeal with all, with all things, but they forget all patience and teaching. So when it comes to, for instance, coming to the true doctrine, at the beginning, I guess I've seen patience is an issue, right? Because people expect everybody to understand as quickly as they did, as simple as they did, and it doesn't happen. So people tend to lose patience. Now, when it comes to Christianity, I would say, is this the main issue? And of course, those who just started with us and have just begun to read the scriptures with us and understand the doctrine, so on and so forth. At the beginning, of course, they may lack knowledge, so they will have a hard time teaching. But that is something that will come with the ruach and with the time of learning, that you will be ready to also teach what you have learned and put into practice, and therefore even have come to understand, in order to explain it to others in a deeper way. So, but I have no doubt that those who follow Yahushua will have this part if they continue in the way. Obviously, also this one. But my point is that because of the doctrine, which is so powerful, the revelation, and because of what the fact that it has to be urgent, people end up lacking patience, right? Because urgency and patience kind of go separate ways, right? If it's urgent, you need to do it right now. But if you have patience, it's because you have to wait, right? So we need to know that time is passing by and that everybody needs to hear. But we need to have patience because not everybody's ready. And Yahweh is the one who decides when someone will be ready, not you. But it's part of it. That's why we're reading and doing all of this. So it's cool. And like I said, it's part of it. It happens. And that's how we grow. So, and like I said, it's because of this right here be urgent, but have patience. So sometimes it's hard to deal with those two things at the same time, right? So be urgent in season, out of season, always. Convict, warn, appeal with all patience and teaching. So we need to understand the doctrine, understand what we believe in, so that we may be able to defend it and explain it to others so that they be able to learn. And we need to have patience, because Yahweh is the one who reveals himself to them. And because some people are, well, everybody's different. So some people will take longer to accept it, to understand it. Or some people will be offended by what you tell them. So you also need to take what they're going to say without being offended. So therefore, also you need patience to deal with people who try to hurt you even with words, just because they don't understand what they are being told. So by them, when they are not able to defend what they believe, when they are not able to answer, and when their ego wins, and therefore they don't want to listen or accept that they were wrong and that they need to do make a change, then that's when they start to get offensive, right? And we need patience to deal with that and not act like them, because then we would become like them, right? As the scripture says regarding um, the fool, or acting just like the fool. So verse 3, for there shall be a time when they shall not bear sound teaching. So you see how, well, obviously this comes right after saying this. So that's why we need patience, and not just patience, all the patience in the world, right? But remember, like I always say, that the ruach, a fruit of the ruach of the spirit, is patience. So the more we get ruach, the more patient we will be, because we are in a world that is trapped in time. So in the flesh, when the part that is of this world, there's no patience. There's no time for patience, because time is passing by. So everything in the flesh says now, 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 because you can only deal with the present. One in the future, and well, depending on the person, crying about the past. So when we become spiritual, then the ruach enters, and since the ruach is eternal, there's no time for the ruach. So patience is just natural, if I could say that word, when it comes to the spiritual, right? And therefore, the more spiritual we get, the more patient we will be. And we need to understand that when we are losing patience is because we are listening to the flesh too much. So we need to make the balance. So it is important to remember that patience is a fruit of the spirit. And it has to do with the fact that, like I said, the flesh cannot be patient, because it's in a world of time. And that's why, I mean, you can see, well, an animal shows no patience, right? Unless he is trained completely. And still, well, we have no idea what goes inside with the emotions and everything. And what I mean, when you're about to give them food or something that they want. And you can see that also in children, because since they are souls that have entered a body of flesh, they need to start learning from the beginning of their lives how to deal with that flesh, that vehicle in which they are living in this reality. And that's why it's hard for children to be patient. And that is something that needs to be taught and learned. And like I said, even more through the spirit. So continuing, proclaim the word, be urgent in season, out of season, convict, warn, appeal with all patience and teaching. For there shall be a time when they shall not bear sound teaching. So interesting, patience, because there shall be a time, right? when they shall not bear sound teaching. So we need to be patient because people do not want to hear it. They don't want to hear the truth. Sound teaching. They want to hear what they want to hear. They want to hear just positive things. They don't want to hear that they're doing anything wrong. They want to hear that everything's going to be fine, and everything will if you do things right according to his will, not according to your own. And that is the problem, because people have become worshipers of their own desires or ego. Well, actually, that's what we see here. But according to their own desires. All right. So be patient. Convict, warn, appeal with all patience and teaching. For there shall be a time when they shall not bear sound teaching. And that was almost 2,000 years ago. So imagine now. But according to their own desires, they just want to hear that their desires are fine and that they will be met, fulfilled. They shall heap up for themselves teachers tickling the ear. Oh, there are so many of those nowadays. And that's what he says here, right? They shall heap up for themselves, right? They choose for themselves those teachers. So those teachers multiply because those type of people see that there's money in it. So they get into it for the money, for the followers, for the fame, just like everything else in this world, right? Actors, singers, and all of that. Most of them desiring fame and fortune. And that's what they tell us when we were children, that that is the easiest or best way to be in this reality. And everybody wants to be one or the other, or well, any type of celebrity nowadays, right? So a lot of people turn the spiritual into that. And sadly, like I said, those type of people, they multiply. So the people that follow, they shall heap up for themselves teachers tickling their ear. They just tell them what they want to hear. And those type of teachers, when they start to see that there's money that they're getting, and they're starting to live more comfortable and all of that, then when the Ruach tells them that they need to do something different, and they realize that they may lose some people, they stop listening to the Ruach, right? And that's how they end up diverting from the truth. Even if they were trying to, they start telling a false doctrine. They start saying the things that people want to hear, so that people don't leave them, right? So that people don't leave the church. So they shall heap up for themselves teachers to clean the ear. And well, it says Isaiah 30:10. Let's go read this one real quick. Isaiah 30:10, Jeremiah 5:30. Well, but let's see this one first. Who say to the seers, do not see, right? This is what people do nowadays. They say to the seers, do not see. And to the prophets, do not prophesy to us what is right. Speak to us what is smooth. Prophesy deceits, right? It's amazing how it is, right? And how it's being fulfilled to the T. Speak to us what is smooth. Prophesy deceits. Do not prophesy to us what is right. They don't want to hear it. They tell the seers, do not see, right? If you see something that is coming, you got to tell others. But they tell the seers, don't see. You close your eyes, let it happen. Don't tell us. We don't want to worry. We don't want to fear, etc. And like I said, if you follow Yahweh, you shouldn't fear. There's nothing to fear. But people don't want to follow Yahweh, so they rather avoid knowing what's coming so that they don't have any fear, not understanding how bad of a decision that is. So the other thing was Jeremiah 5:31, and it says, the prophets have prophesied falsely, and the priests rule by their own hand, right? They do what they want to do. They don't care. Now what Yahweh wants them to do, they do whatever they please. The so-called prophets prophesied falsely because they were told by others not to prophesy, so they started to just prophesy what they wanted. And my people have loved it, so it's amazing. And what are you going to do at the end of it, right? What are they going to do when things fulfill? When the things that the true prophets were saying are fulfilled, what will they do? They won't be able to stop the Almighty, nor his will, nor his anger until it is fulfilled. And lastly, Romans 16:18, it says, for such ones do not serve our sovereign Yahushua HaMashiach, but their own stomach. And by smooth words and flattering speech, they deceive the hearts of the innocent. Yep. All connects. Perfect, right? It's confirmation. That's right. So, going back to Timothy. As he was saying, for there shall be a time when they shall not bear sound teaching, but according to their own desires, they shall heap up for themselves teachers tickling the ear. And they shall indeed turn their ears away from the truth. They shall indeed, there was no doubt about it, 2,000 years ago, yet people still believe that the religion in which they were born is the correct one. And those other ones are the false doctrines. That is something, there's an illusion that comes from the fact of only having experienced your own life. But we need to be able to look from outside of ourselves and realize that there's a lot of years besides the ones we've lived, and there's a lot that has happened since Mashiach came. So they shall indeed turn their ears away from the truth. That means they're going to turn their ears to the lies, right? Of course, to the smooth words that we were just seeing, and be turned aside to myths, like those that were mixed up with what they would call the Christian religion or Catholic, right? All the myths from all different pagan religions mixed up with the truth of the scriptures, what Mashiach fulfilled, so that every pagan would become part of the church that came from the Roman Empire. But you be sober in all matters, suffer hardships. This is hard to take, right? But it is true, and it is part of it. It's part of being with the truth in a world of lies. Suffer hardships. So you be sober in all matters, suffer hardships, do the work of an evangelist, right? Announce the good news. Accomplish your service completely. That goes to all of us. For I am already being poured out, and the time of my departure has arrived. It's interesting, right? For remember that Shaul, Paul represents the witness like Moshe, the coming of the last, who will be killed with the witness Eliyahu. So here we see that it says, for I am already being poured out, and the time of my departure has arrived. Interesting that right now, let me, well, just because of this verse and what I just mentioned, remember that not only are we close to the end, right, to everything that needs to be fulfilled, but right now we are we're here on the 7th of Etanim. So only 2 days from Yom Kippur, which is the day when the two witnesses die, right? Or the last will be poured out. So, for I am already being poured out, and the time of my departure has arrived. I have fought the good fight. I have finished the race. I have guarded the belief. So I have fought the good fight. This is interesting. Obviously, we all have a fight against the flesh, against the enemy. the spiritual war. But remember also that the last was represented by Jacob, and he's being represented by Paulus here. So the last was represented by Jacob, just like the first was represented by Yitzhak. Yaakov was the one who fought with Elohim in Genesis and became Israel, for he won the fight. And that represents how the last comes, who is Michael in the flesh, and then he dies, resurrects, gains the authority in order to go and fight Lucifer, the dragon, in Revelation 12, and expel him from the heavens. So when the last dies and resurrects, he will fight that battle, which is the good fight, in the sense of, remember how the last is connected to the word good, and obviously taking out the enemy is the good fight. So I have fought the good fight. I have finished the race, right? For Shaul would use that analogy about life and ministry being like a race. So I have finished the race, but also connects with the last, because Yahweh said that he would come as a gibor, and like the sun who comes out as a groom around all the world, shining light, of course, right? I'm paraphrasing. So there's a connection between the last, the gibor, or the warrior, who comes as the son of righteousness, as the groom for the bride, of course, the congregation. So by saying I have finished the race, is like the sun when he goes around the 24 hours, or when he goes around the 364 days, or I would say when it comes to the sun, 365, right? For that's its cycle. So just like Hanok, remember that a lot of people believe that the two witnesses are Hanok and Eliyahu. So they believe that the witness like Moshe is Hanok, and there are several connections. One of them, that the last comes as the son of righteousness, and Hanok was taken up when he was 365 years of age, representing that he is the son, for that is the length of the cycle, the solar cycle. So I have fought the good fight. That connects with the fact that the last comes as Israel to fight Elohim and defeat him, meaning the mighty one of this world, Revelation 12. I have finished the race, for he comes as a gibor, as the groom, as the son of righteousness, to complete the race, meaning his ministry, 3.5 years will last. I have guarded the belief in Yahushua, of course. The last comes to guard, meaning to protect, as the witness of the truth, as the messenger of Mashiach, as a netzar, one who guards, and also as a branch, natzar, which is very similar, the word. And the belief obviously is where he comes to teach. So then he says, for the rest, there is laid up for me the crown of righteousness. Right? So he was saying that he was going to die, right? And therefore he was going to be justified or become righteous through resurrection. That's why he mentions the crown of righteousness, even though in another time when he didn't have it so clear, he thought that he could perhaps be transformed during the harvest, right? As we see in the book of Corinthians. So pretty much we see that here he came to understand that he had to die and then receive the crown of righteousness. Now, remember that the last comes to bring justice, therefore righteousness. Just like Mashiach is connected to salvation, the last is connected to righteousness, because with the mouth one confesses for salvation, but with the heart one believes unto righteousness. Yahushua is the word that is confessed with the mouth. Yahushua is the brain when it comes to the body. The last is the heart. That's why David had a heart like unto the heart of Yahweh. So the last is the heart. That's why the last is connected to righteousness. And the Kehuna would be connected to the brain or the head, and the reign, the kingship, to the heart, right? Like the lion of Yehudah represents that. So the crown of righteousness, just like the last is given a crown, as we see in Revelation 6, So for the rest, there is laid up for me the crown of righteousness, which the sovereign, the righteous judge, shall give to me on that day, right? On the day of his resurrection, or we could also see it as the day of Yahweh, which is pretty much the same. For he will resurrect everybody at the beginning of, well, a lot of the people who will be resurrected at the beginning of the day of Yahweh, and the rest will be resurrected at the end of it. So at the end will be same day. Shall give to me on that day, and not to me only, but also to all those loving his appearing, right? All those who love the fact that he will appear once again, all those who are waiting for it and therefore are seeking into the scriptures to know when or how that would happen. Those are who actually love his appearing, not those who are just saying whatever, whenever happens, it happens. Or those who have even come to the point of not believing anymore that he will appear. Do your best to come to me soon. Do your best to come to me soon. For Demas, having loved this present world, has deserted me and went to Thessalonica. Right, you see Nike right here. Okay, it's a victory. Crescens to Galatia, Titus to Dalmatia, or Titus to Dalmatia. So let me see a couple of these names right here, verse 10. Demas, forsaken me, having loved this present world, and is departed unto Thessalonica. Crescens to Galatia, Titus unto Dalmatia. So name after name, Demas, we see that is a governor of the people. Governor of the people, right? A leader. Then we have Thessalonica, where Demas went. The triumph of falsity. Victory is Nike, that we just saw, right? The goddess of victory, Nike. So we see it right here in the meaning of the name. Victory of falsity, which that is interesting because you see how it says Demas, the governor of the people, meaning like politicians, those who are leaders of this world, have forsaken me, having loved this present world, like they normally do when they get authority, and is departed unto the victory of falsity, as in falsehood won over the heart of the mass, just like it does over the politicians, and that's why they all lie so much. So the mass went in the apostasy, represented by Thessalonica, right? And the mass represents also, obviously, the fact that there will be, or there have been people who become part of the congregation and eventually end up coming out of the congregation, for they were never part of it, but it had to be revealed, right, that they were not, so they left. That is the case of Demas. Having loved this present world, many people may come to the belief for a moment, like we see also in the parable of the sower. So you may put the seed in a person that seems to be believing it so much and so well and so strongly, but in a few days it dies out, right? Like those in stones or thorns. So afterwards, either through the tribulations of the world, or in this case, because of the love for this present world, they go and they go stray from the way of Yahweh, which is Yahushua, and go into falsehood, which wins over them. Then crescents to Galatia, which means We have case growing. Well, here we have the land of Gali, and it will depend because there are certain things that are said here. But let's say we take Gali in the Hebrew. Remember that in the Hebrew, Gal is, or well, yeah, that's in Galilee, or well, other ones like Abigail. The root of it is circle or joy, circle or circuit. So the land of the circle, which therefore would represent the earth, for Yahweh sits over the circle of the earth, and time, because time repeats itself like a circle. So growing in the land that is a circle. Then nurse, Titus, and Dalmatia, a priestly robe. So let's see. Oh, well, and there are other names here, but I remember this is he who brings light. This is a defense, or the one who defends. So then we would have that the governor of the people had the triumph of falsehood or falsity, which would be like the first beast will deceive the whole world and will grow. It's interesting, like the crescent moon, right? As the light grows, and will grow in the earth, which is the circle of the earth, in time. While the nurse will give the priestly robes. Now the Ruach is like a nurse in the sense of how it spiritually nurses us, right? So the Mesha would be the fact that we are covered by the Ruach in order to receive the priesthood, the Kehuna, for Yahushua made us kings and priests. So the nurse gives the priesthood robes or priestly robes. And then we have, just a second, Tychicus, Ephesus, Troas, Carpus. So we have other names, Alexander, which is man. I think that's it. So, Tukikos, faithful. So you see how it starts to get positive. Permitted, which is the first congregation of Revelation 2. And interestingly enough, it represents when the two witnesses are captured. Though the church of the world will be permitted to capture the two witnesses, as I explained in the book. And I say that it's interesting because we just saw the thing about crescent. Now we see here Troas, or a Trojan. Remember that, well, sadly, is not giving us a meaning, right? Which is what it should do. But it says a Trojan, which when you think about a Trojan, even more nowadays, right? You think of a virus, something that may enter the computer, take over. Back in the day, obviously, to the Trojan horse, right? Or even now, I mean, for some, the Trojan horse. Remember that horse in Hebrew is Zeus, Jesus, the horse, right? I already, I think I did show you guys once, and I don't think, well, you guys can do it on your side because I don't think you guys are going to hear it. But if you do this that I'm about to do, you will hear at least how the name, the false name is pronounced in Spanish. If you write, write this right here, you see that it says the horse, and you can hear it by clicking here. So just a second, because I clicked something and now hope I don't mess up anything. But yeah, well, I clicked something else. It was this, the one I needed to click. So yeah, you click here on the speaker and it will tell you basically Jesus, right? Which is how you pronounce it in Spanish. But if you want to see it in English, well, there are several ways in which you can write it in order to get the sound of the false name, either in English or Spanish or other. But like I said, this Zeus is horse. And I was saying that because of this, the Trojan horse. Remember that after the two witnesses are killed, resurrected, and taken, when the chosen few are given the priestly robes, meaning their new bodies, that is when the false Messiah will be manifesting on the earth, right? Like a Trojan horse, because the enemy comes inside, although it will seem like a gift for the world, but everybody will be drunk with the wine of the fornication of the great whore of Babylon. So they will accept the gift, not understanding that is their own death, that it is the lie manifesting as a person, which is a false Messiah. So then we have fruit, man defender. So keeping everything in mind, and hopefully I'll remember each and every name. The governor of the people will have triumph through falsehood and will grow in the earth, right? In the sense of in honor and esteem, everybody will love him during the first 3.5 years of the last 7. And then the nurse will give priestly robes, bringing light and a defense, right? Protecting the chosen few and giving the light, which is Mashiach, the true doctrine. Then we had this name, which is faithful. Remember that the last comes as the faithful witness. So the nurse will give the priestly robes and bring the light and a defense through the faithful one, or being faithful, right? Being faithful when it will be permitted, carpus was fruit, when it will be permitted for the fruit of Troja, right? If we take Troja as what I was mentioning, although obviously it would be better with what we're doing as with the name, but because of the concordances that I'm taking it like that. Let me see. Foot soldier. Formation civilizations, modern society. Troy is a baby boy named origin must come derived from Irish. But you see the origin they're giving it is not from actual Troy, right? It's from Irish, so, or Ireland. They say foot soldier. Okay, so here we have this is primarily a male name of Greek origin that means water or foot soldier. All right, so they're not completely sure. Now, if I'm just gonna take 3 ways, and we're gonna finish here right with man defender. All right, man defender. Purpose is fruit. All right, so just this second part, we could see it as through he who is faithful, when it will be permitted for the fruit of remember, like I said, Trojan in the sense of the seed that they went through by receiving the gift of the Trojan horse as Zeus. So when he will be permitted for the fruit of falsehood, the lie, the witness, the false Messiah, then men will be defended, as in the chosen few will be guarded from that falsehood. But we could say, as he says, man defender, is that the false Messiah will appear as the one who will defend the people, the humanity. But if we take this as it said water, it would be then, or he is faithful, and he will permit the fruit of the water of life to defend men, right? Which men? The chosen few who received from the nurse the priestly robe, the light, and a defense. And the other one was a foot soldier. So the faithful witness, when he will be permitted to take the fruit as a foot soldier and defend humanity, or men, those, the chosen few who are the fruit during the harvest, right? So it will be the fact that the witness, like Moshe, the faithful witness, is permitted to take the fruit as a foot soldier to defend the chosen few during the harvest, right? So hope that was clear. I know I said a lot, so I'll continue. So it said, for Demas, having loved this present world, has deserted me and went to Thessalonica. Crescens to Galatia, Titus to Dalmatia. Lucas alone is with me. Take Marcos and bring him with you, for he is of good use to me for service. And Tychicus I have sent to Ephesus. Bring the cloak that I left with Carpos and Troas when you come, and the books, especially the parchments. All right, bring the scriptures with you, don't forget it. So bring the cloak that I left with Carpos and at Troas. Bring the cloak that I left with the fruits, which we could say the cloak is the ruach that covers us according to our fruits as foot soldiers of Yahweh, because we have the water of life. Bring the cloak that I left with Carpos at Troas when you come, and the books, especially the parchments. Alexander, the coppersmith, did many evils to me. The sovereign shall repay him according to his works. You see that Shaul doesn't say, may the sovereign destroy him. May the sovereign, he's not saying anything that comes from actual wickedness in the heart, but only through the righteousness which desires justice. So he says, Alexander, who because of his name should be a defender of men, the coppersmith. But that's interesting because remember that Alexander was also the name of Alexander the Great, the one who conquered the whole world when the Greek Empire had its time, which is represented by brass, or in this case, we could say copper. So also Alexander the Great, not this one, but the name Alexander the Great, was believed to be a son of Mercury, as in a Nephilim. It is said that one of his eyes, at least, was like that of a goat, and other things are said regarding him. So I'm saying that because of the connection with the name and because of the connection with his profession. So he who should defend men because of the apostasy that is represented by copper or brass did many evils to those who are righteous, represented by Shaul, Paul. So Alexander the coppersmith did many evils to me. The sovereign shall repay him according to his works. And that is all we can expect in every way for those who are wicked and for those who are righteous, because if you are righteous, you will be repaid in a good way according to your works, but those who are wicked deserve also to be paid according to their works. So the sovereign shall repay him according to his works. You too, beware of him, right? Important. You too, beware of him. So we are not gossiping, because if, like, what Paul is doing here is telling him, yo, beware, be careful, because I had an experience with this person who claims to be one of us, but he did me wrong. Yahweh will take care of it, but you be careful. That is not gossiping. And I mentioned that because there have been times in which people from our congregation stay quiet regarding a certain situation with certain person, and nobody says anything because they believe that they would do wrong by speaking out, by coming to me and letting me know, yo, this is happening, be careful, or this happened with this two people, one hurt the other, whatever. So if they don't tell me, I cannot do anything about it, and then it may grow or become worse, or he or she may hurt more of the sheep. So we need to talk to each other, and we need to know how to separate or discern between what is gossiping in order to destroy others, in order just to whatever, pass the time just talking ill of others. Instead of that, we're trying to defend the congregation, each other, our brethren, because we love our neighbor as ourselves. So we must protect each other from whatever may come from outside or within. So you too, beware of him, for he strongly opposed our words. Right? There are some who oppose, just to go against, just to try and make others confused, or just leave the way which they don't want to accept. But somehow they are always present. They are always having time to do that. Is crazy. So at my first defense, no one stood with me, but all forsook me. Let it not be held against them. Right? So you see how he uses mercy here, just like Mashiach said, let them forgive them, for they do not know what they do. Which we could say, yeah, we're talking as at my first appearance, right? The first manifestation, no one stood with me, because all the disciples went away when he got caught, but all forsook me, even Peter, who denied him. Let it not be held against them. Forgive them, for they do not know what they do. But also we see in Isaiah 63 that Yahweh, talking about the manifestation of the last, he says something very similar. And I'll just check it out real quick. He says, and I looked, but there was none helping. I was astonished that there was none upholding. So my own arm saved for me, and my wrath upheld me. I use this verse a lot. I explained this verse a lot, so I won't get into it that much right now. But I just wanted to show how this will happen at the end. There was none to help. So Shaul is saying, at my first defense, no one stood with me, but all forsook me. Let it not be held against them. So just like the first, so will also happen with the last. But the sovereign stood with me and did strengthen me, right? We can do all things through Mashiach, who strengthens us. Mashiach is the arm. The strength of the hand is in the arm. So the strength of the last, as Paul, is Mashiach as the arm. So how interesting that it says here in Isaiah 63, and I looked, but there was none helping, and I was astonished that there was none upholding. So my own arm, the strength, Mashiach, saved Yahushua for me, and my wrath, because the last comes with the wrath, upheld me. And he continues, and it's a powerful chapter. So, but the sovereign stood with me and did strengthen me, so that through me the preaching might be completely accomplished. This is perfect, because it is confirming that Shaul represents the last, so that through me the preaching, meaning the whole teaching, the doctrine, the witnessing of the two prophets of Revelation 11, the preaching might be completely accomplished. Completely accomplished, that means finished, right? And there was still a couple thousand years to go. And Yahushua said, when the whole world listens to the good news, then the end will come. So that hasn't happened, has to happen now with the two witnesses, one of which is represented by Paul. And that's why Paul says this, because when it comes to his experience and his ministry, he completely accomplished it. And he explained the whole doctrine in the letter. So he accomplished it. But there were a lot of people that had to come to the world throughout the generations after him that will go in the apostasy. And then the last, represented by him, would manifest to get what he wrote and explain it through the Ruach HaKodesh in the end times to the chosen few. And that all the nations, right? He comes to the nations, and that all the nations should hear, not just Israel, all the nations. That's why Yahushua came to the tribes. He came for the lost tribes of Israel, came to his people, and his people rejected him. Now he comes to the nations as Moshe in Egypt, as Zerubbabel in Babel, and as many others we see in scriptures. And I was rescued out of the lion's mouth, just like Daniel, who was in Babel and in the Persian Empire, right? And he was put in the lion's den. And Yahweh protected him, just like here is being mentioned regarding Paul. Psalm 22:21. Save me from the mouth of the lion and from the horns of the wild beasts. You have answered me. Save me from Satan, Samael, and from the horns in plural, we could say Halel and Azazel. That's why it says wild beasts, plural. Although, if I'm not mistaken, it may say reem. So, it's such a perfect psalm. No wonder they took it out. Prophesies of Mashiach. But coming back to Timothy, but the sovereign stood with me and did strengthen me, so that through me the preaching might be completely accomplished. There was something I wanted to show regarding this. So let's go to Revelation 10. Remember that the two witnesses appear in Revelation 11. So right after this chapter. This chapter is pretty much preparing the reader for what comes with the witnesses and after them. So is like a parenthesis in the middle of the book of Revelation. And it says at the almost end of it, you see right here. And the messenger, I'll read from the 5th. And the messenger whom I saw standing on the sea and on the land lifted up his right hand to the heaven. So the sea, the land, and the heavens, the nations, the many, and the few, the entire creation. And swore by him who lives forever and ever, who created the heavens and what is in it, the earth and what is in it, and the sea and what is in it, that there shall be no further delay. But in the days of the sounding of the seventh messenger, meaning the seventh trumpet, which sounds right after the death and resurrection of the two witnesses, which is when the harvest will happen, according to what Paul wrote in Thessalonians and in Corinthians, during the seventh trumpet, which is the last and final trumpet, the chosen few will be transformed during the harvest. So we see here that it says, but in the days of the sounding of the seventh messenger, when he is about to sound, the secret of Yahweh shall also be ended. And as he declared to his servants, the prophets, the secret of Yahweh shall also be ended. Remember that Yahweh reveals everything to his servants, the prophets. He doesn't do anything without revealing it first to his servants, the prophets. He hides something, and it is the honor of a king to reveal it, to find it, that which is secret. So by this time, when the seventh trumpet sounds, everything that Yahweh hid when it comes to revelation, prophecy in the scriptures will be finally revealed. So in the days of the sounding of the seventh messenger, when he's about to sound, right? Remember that I said the two witnesses resurrect, and then the trumpet sounds like a day and a half. Well, no, like 8 days after, actually 9 days and a half. So when he's about to sound, the two witnesses resurrect, I repeat, the secret of Yahweh shall also be ended, because when the two witnesses die and resurrect, everything will be fulfilled. And that's when the door of mercy will be closed, when that which was covering the eyes of people will be taken away when it comes to the doctrine, meaning that the many will realize that they made a mistake and they will reject the mark of the beast. And that's the reason why they will have to go through death. Because, like I said, the door of mercy will have been shut, and there will only be justice. And that's why they will have to go through that, because the payment or the wage of sin is death. So if we go back to Paul, he says, so that through me the preaching might be completely accomplished. Like that was revealed to the prophets, the secret, which will be completed on the seventh trumpet, which is explained by Paul, for he says, I will tell you a secret, a mystery regarding the harvest. Not all will die, but we all shall be transformed during the last trumpet, right? So we see a clear connection between the last trumpet, the complete fulfillment of the prophecies and of the teaching given by the witness like Moshe for 3.5 years. When he dies, he completes it. And that's why the seventh trumpet sounds and all the secret of Yahweh is revealed. And that all the nations should hear. And I was rescued out of the lion's mouth. Right? Because the last, remember that the last comes as the prodigal son. So Yahweh rescues him through Mashiach in order to use him for his will. Just like he did with Paul, who was losing himself as a Pharisee, rejecting the truth, even being aware and well, how can I put it? Being agreeing with others when it came to killing those who believed in Mashiach, an accomplice pretty much. All of that was the enemy taking him, but Yahweh appeared to him and therefore rescued him out of the lion's mouth. And the sovereign shall rescue me from every wicked work and save me from his heavenly reign, confirming that the last comes as a king. And the sovereign shall rescue me from every wicked work and save me from his heavenly reign. I'm sorry again. And save me for his heavenly reign. To him be esteem forever and ever. Amen. Greet Prisca and Aculas in the house of Onesiphorus. Let me see, because this I think is Aquilas. Let me see this name 19. Prisca, Aquila, Onesiphorus. Prisca means ancient. Aquila is an eagle. And Onesiphorus bringing profit. So there are more. Erastus, second, see these other names first. I always make jokes with this name, Trophimus. So brother, I named him that, or he doesn't like it. So, I mean, I named him that, but it was a joke, but because of the way he took it, I kept it. He didn't like it, so I keep on calling him that. But he doesn't like it either. So you see, as I was saying, Triska, ancient, Aquila, eagle, Onesiphorus, bringing profit, Erastus, beloved, Corinth, satiated, Trophimus is nutritious, Miletus is pure, white, fine wool. Hope I remember that one. Or the Evolus is prudent. Has 3 more to go. Prudence is modest. And Linus is a net. Lastly, I'm gonna have to check a couple ones. But lastly is Claudia, which is lame. It would be the ancient eagle. Remember that the eagle represents a messenger. In the positive sense, would be the Malach of Yahweh, Mikael, or obviously even Yahushua, who is the messenger of Yahweh, Mikael, the messenger of Yahushua. The ancient eagle would be either Yahweh or his manifestation through his Malach. Then it says, bringing profit. So the ancient eagle is bringing profit through his beloved, or for his beloved, right? Either for the chosen few whom he loves, or through Mashiach, the beloved one. So that, to satiate or to satisfy, right? The fulfillment of all prophecies, and also those who are his, those who are beloved, to complete history. For he is nutritious, right? Remember that Yahushua is the bread of life. The good news are his flesh, bezorot, as in basar, flesh. So we must eat the doctrine. That's what is going to give life to our soul for eternity. So Trophimus is nutritious, and then we have Miletus, which is pure white fine wool. So it goes along with what we were saying, because once again, the ancient eagle is bringing profit through the beloved by completing history, satisfying the chosen few, completing the doctrine. For it is nutritious, and it's also fine white wool, meaning our covering. For he is the lamb that covers us with his body, his flesh, so that we are forgiven of our sins. So even if our sins were red, they will become white as wool. So not only is he nutritious, for he gave his flesh as the food of our soul for eternal life, but he also gave his skin, we could say, so that we could cover ourselves, right? Just like if you take a sheep, you can eat its flesh and take the wool to cover yourself. So that's why Yahushua came as the lamb, the beloved, to bring, to make his beloved satiated through that which is nutritious and with the covering of fine white wool. For he is prudent and modest. For he is prudent and modest, and like a net. Remember that he came to make the chosen few, the disciples, fishers of men, and they use nets. As with a net, we could say that became lame. Remember that when Mashiach called the disciples the first time, that represents the first coming, there was a hole in the net because of the many fish that they caught. So some went out through that hole. That represented the apostasy, that even though Mashiach came and brought the truth, there would be a hole in the doctrine because of falsehood, and many would come out of it throughout the 2,000 years. That's why in John, at the end of it, we see that Mashiach appears to them and they are fishing again, but this time the net doesn't break. There's no hole in it, and all the fish that they caught are taken out. 153 of them, which represent the chosen few, as I have explained in the past. Also, we could say that he comes as one who is lame. And I say that because remember that there's a difference between the first and the last. The last comes as the prodigal son. So in a sense, spiritually, that would be being lame, which is connected or represented by the time when Jacob fought the Malach and the Malach hit him where it hurts. And he was lame, at least for a while, according to some interpretations. He was healed afterwards, but some believe he had to walk with a cane from that moment on, right? So that would mean that he comes as Jacob, who fights the mighty one of this world. He will come prudent, for he uses wisdom, right? As it was mentioned through the names here. As I was saying, greet Prisca and Aquilas and the house of Onesiphorus. Erastus stayed in Corinth, but I left Trophimus sick in Miletus. Do your best to come before winter. Eubulus greets you, and Putes and Linus and Claudia and all the brothers. The sovereign Yahushua HaMashiach be with your spirit. Favor be with you. Amen. And that's how the letter ends. Very powerful.